Shalom, I'm Kendra Rosh Omanut, and this is a video for Tsevet Omanut to learn how to do a polymer clay cane covered, we're going to call this a kiddush cup for Havdalah. So this is for the Kochavim curriculum. Their theme is Havdalah. You could see easily that this could transfer to a kiddush cup of any kind for a Sevet program, something like that. So I'm going to show you this technique, which is using a kind of oven bake colored clay called polymer clay. And what you do is you make a cane, which I will show you in a minute, and then you make slices. It's a good idea to pick a color scheme. Here's a different color scheme. And what you can have is the campers or the participants can trade. And this is a good way to make it go faster. If you have a camper who's very particular, they might get stuck on really taking too much time on this. So in that kind of case, what you want to do is encourage them to really get into the cooperative aspect of trading and say, like, oh, it's really fun. You can have a little bit of yours and a little bit of theirs. So let me show you what a cane is. And that will make more sense to you. But before I do, I just want to point out that this yellow and purple one has already been baked and it's firm. It does not need to be covered with a shellac. I know if you look on the internet, you're going to see a lot of people are putting some kind of coating, a gloss on polymer clay. Polymer clay is an acrylic. It is basically made of the same material, some kind of acrylic polymer that you would use to coat on it. The only difference is that's going to make it shiny. Okay, so that's not needed. That's an unnecessary step. I suppose if you had some spare time and you wanted to extend this and make it longer, or you were very particular about having it shiny and we had the material, you could do that. It's some kind of gloss. In particular, it does need to be made for polymer clay. Don't use Mod Podge or anything else. It has to be a gloss finishing sealer for polymer clay in particular. This one I have not baked, and so it is still soft. Okay, so it's going to remain soft and workable until you bake it. So this is going to be a multi-day project. Let me show you the canes. The way that it really works well to store this is in these deli containers. Now, I know this is obvious, but I have seen many people struggle to open them. So if you just go like this, it's not going to open because it's still stuck everywhere. So you need to explain to the campers, go all around and just unlock it, unlift it off from this little ridge all the way around first, and then it will come up. Okay. So this is a container that I had labeled canes to share. So I had been making this cane. I didn't need it anymore. I just put it in the donating thing. So this is what I was talking about, how you can encourage people to make it go faster. So what is a cane? A cane is basically this log shape. This is rectangular. You can have it be circular. I'll show you how to build this. But essentially what you're doing is you're taking an X-Acto knife, cutting thin slices, and then sticking it on. And it's just going to stick on. If you cover it completely, just the physical force of all of the clay touching itself will hold it in place and you don't need any glue. If you're going to have it separate, that's not going to work. It's going to snap off. Make sure that you explain it has to be touching, continuous. It can't be like, Hawaii off to the side. It has to be touching the rest of the clay. Okay, so let's start with some basics. What do you need? The best placemat is just a piece of printer paper. I know that on the internet, if you look into this method, you might see special silicone mats or acrylic, like plexiglass sheets. I have not found that to be helpful at all. The best thing is this paper. Next, we're going to roll it out flat. So instead of the pasta machine, if we have plenty of pasta machines, but in my mind, it is more trouble than it's worth. Regular playing cards, I'm going to take 7 and another stack of 7. Regular playing cards are going to be much easier for cleanup. That's the big thing. Cleanup is going to be much easier. Okay, so I've got a stack of 7. What I'm aiming to do is take some clay and roll it out in between and make it flat so I can get these different layers. Okay, so getting back to my storage system, blues, okay? These would be not mixed up colors, all the blues. This is a really great way to store it in a communal setting like the Omanik building. I also wanted to point out I have this container of mixed. This is colors that, despite that we tried to save it, they're just not gonna mix well. If you mixed it, it would make mud. Just let's separate this. So, you know, blue colors that could be just recrumbled to make, you know, if you had a light blue and a dark blue, you can mix it to make a medium blue, or it's going to be kept here. So already I had some pieces that were already rolled out. This is what we're going to try to do. So you're going to take a chunk of clay and you're going to warm it up your hands. This is Sculpey 3. Sculpey 3 is easier for children to work with because it is softer. If you need something more professional and polished for an adult program, something that you can use is Sculpey Primo. Most likely I will have ordered Sculpey 3 for this, but if you look into this online, you will see many polymer clay artists discussing that Sculpey 3 is better for making little kids' clay sculptures, thinking about the Sololim polymer clay covered mezuzahs we have in the building, something like that. It is not ideal for making these canes at an adult level because it is a little bit mushy. And when you go to slice it, it will blend a little bit. But for our purposes, it is perfectly fine. And you don't need to mention this to the campers. I'm just letting you know, if you're looking up this technique on the internet and you see people describing Sculpey 3 as not being good for the cane technique, I'm aware of that, but I'm making the decision in my experience that it's just too firm and it takes too long for it to soften up. You see, I was very quickly able to get this workable. This stage is called conditioning the clay. So I mushed it up. I could roll it into a log, okay, with my hands. And then I can wrap it with the flattened clay. Okay, but what I'm going to do right now is show you how to actually flatten it. So you mush it up. Make it into a pancake, but tell them not to make it too thick. I've seen some campers really smush it down, and they smush it down so thin that it's even thinner than the thickness of these playing cards. So put it here in the middle, and then just do one roll. Some kids get carried away and they want to go back and forth and back and forth, but what that may do is make the clay wrap around, and it's more frustrating than not. So once you do one push, pick it up and turn it over. If you just leave it in the same spot, it can adhere to the paper, and that can be frustrating. Different factors like humidity, the hotness of one's hands can affect this. So just roll it up, pick it up, and change it. So it's going to be the right thickness when the acrylic roller is going directly on top of the stack of 7 cards on each pile and rolling it flat. Now, 6 would be fine too. 3 would also be fine. But this 7 is sort of like the biggest, the thickest one. This is the thickest, or maybe the second thickest setting on the pasta machine. If you do want to use the pasta machine, you would condition it, you would make the pancake, and you would just crank it through the machine. But in my mind, this is just easier. Okay, so now I've rolled it flat. What I'm going to show you is how to make a cane, a stripes cane. Okay. I have a resource here of some skills in a packet that you should do in order chronologically because they build on the skills. So the first step is stripes. So this handout is available to you. So get 2 colors. Make sure that the contrast is there. You don't want to have yellow and light yellow. You're not going to be able to see the difference. So this green and the blue is close enough. So what you're going to do is review X-Acto blade safety with the campers. This is what I have here. There may be a different one that's available to you in the Omanut building, but it's basically a long X-Acto knife. Okay, so this part is the top. It's thin metal, but it's not sharp. This shiny edge, and you could move it in the light to them so that they can see, that's the blade. And these are the finger grips. So you never need to be touching here, and you actually don't even need to be touching here, because what if you didn't realize and you press there? So instruct them to hold it from the edges. If the kind of blades we have in the building don't have these grippers, you would just instruct them to hold it from the edges where this metal piece would be if these weren't here. Pressing it down. Now, I do like to say that I do like to let them know that if they're going to goof off with this blade, that's it. There's no second chances. This is the warning, the first time. And after that, I don't want them to be afraid to withhold from me information if they have cut themselves, because we need to clean it with a Clorox wipe. We need to sanitize it for blood germs. So let them know that you can tell the difference between goofing off and an actual mistake. Like if this was down and you were reaching and you were being careful and you weren't rushing, but accidents happen even to me, just tell them you need to let me know so we can set this aside and we can sanitize it. And then what you would want to do is have them wash the cut. It's going to be like a paper cut. Wash it like with a soap and water, dry it, apply a Band-Aid. You can add some, triple antibiotic or Bactrim. The first aid kit is in the office. But it would be a good idea to bring that closer to hand the day that you're using this. One other safety measure that we have in the Omanut building is the X-Acto blades are stored in the office. So they're not easy for kids to grab. And I need you to count them. Don't just have a whole bin of them and let the kids take them and then easily one could slip it into the pocket. You need to give one to each camper, and then the big box of them put back in the office. You need to actually go through the effort to count them to make sure we're not losing. The reason is these can be dangerous on purpose or by accident. And some students engage in self-harm cutting behaviors, and we don't want to be encouraging that by allowing them access to razor blades. So this is a tool. We're going to keep track of it. And that's the reason why. So these scraps that I had cut, these could be remixed and blended to a new color. Okay, so we're going to be resourceful. We're not going to waste. We're going to put this in the blues container. So now you see I have pressed them together, but not squished them. And you can see the different layers. Okay, now for the purpose of this video, I just reused what I had to make it go faster. This is a bit narrow. Okay, you should start with a more generous size, but basically what I'm going to be doing is stacking it up. Okay, so now I have this piece, and what I'm doing is called reducing the cane. So this shape is a cane, and I'm squeezing equally. I don't want to go and smush here. Okay, if I smush too much, that's not going to show me the different stripes. Okay. So now what we can do is we can start slicing, do like a lumberjack, sawing back and forth. A lumberjack method is better for, in particular, this Sculpey 3 clay, because it is so soft, it just sort of gets mushed if you put it. So now, encouraging them to not press so hard that the shape is distorted, stick it on. And you want to try to have a nice thin piece. Might not hurt to do a few practice ones so that they can practice how thin to cut it. I have a feeling most of them are going to start by cutting it too thick. You do want it to be pretty even. It's aesthetically pleasing that way, not to have too many high and too many low. So aim for a thin, even layer. Okay, now, once you say use up half your cane, what you can do next is wrap it with a different color and make a wrapped cane. So what you can see here is I had started with just these plain stripes, but then I wrapped a turquoise all the way around, and then I wrapped it a second time with the blue, and I made a frame around it. Okay, seeing that here. I started with a white. I actually made this into a cube shape. I wrapped it with a purple, and I cut some slices and stuck it on. But then what I did further is I cut those, and I created that, and then I wrapped the whole thing. So let me show you how that's done. Okay, I'm gonna use one of these that's bigger because I think you're going to be able to see it better. All right, so let me use one of these from my donation box, and I'm going to show you how to wrap it. So you're going to roll out a contrasting color to wrap it around. Condition the clay to soften it up. Have an equal amount. 6 on either side would be fine. 3 is probably as small as you want to go if they don't want such a thick border. At the end of the session, if you have some thin pieces that are already rolled out and they fit in the container, encourage them just to be put back in the container as is. It's like community service. You're helping the next person get a head start. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to trim this up. I want to have it wrapped around. So what I want to do is create a straight edge here, and I can wrap it, squeezing, making sure you don't distort it, but you do attach it. Okay. And then here I can cut off the extra, making sure to save it back. Now, this is a nice pile the next person can use. Okay. So I've wrapped it all the way around. And now what I need to do, I've got a little extra here I hadn't noticed before, is trim it off. Now, in this piece, you can separate it, or you can just put it into the mixed one, if that's not going to come nicely. Okay, so now you can see that my original striped cane is now wrapped, and that's more interesting. But it doesn't need to be this big. What you can do is reduce it. You're trying to squeeze on all sides at the same time. Rotate, and this could get, you know, a third of its side longer, maybe even double in length. And that's just going to make it visually appealing, that it's not so big and chunky, that it has a delicate, sophisticated look. So I'm going to take a few slices. The end is always good to either get rid of or just use the flip side because it always tends to be distorted. The lumberjack back and forth sawing method. And now you see where I originally just had a stripe. Now I have a wrapped stripe cane, and I can stick it on here. I'm not going to do that because I'm running out of space. You want to leave the top open so that you can see that it's glass. I think that that looks nice. And it also means that you don't have to do as much work. And it won't take as long. Because this is a project that does take, I would say, at least 3 days for it. And people who are very meticulous can sort of get bogged down in getting it be exactly. You just want to keep it light, keep the tone easy. Okay, so there are some other resources in here that I'm not going to show you that are various variations on the stripes. You can figure that out. I'm going to skip ahead to twirls. Twirls is basically 2 flat pieces. For the sake of this video, I'm just going to use, let's see, what shall I use? I want to make it go fast. All right, I'm gonna use this. Oh, here we go. Here's a lighter one. Okay, so twirls is that you're making basically 2 rolled out pieces. That's why you need to learn to roll a flat sheet out first. Again, work with a bigger piece. I showed you what not to do. I went backwards and it rolled up on me. Okay. So what you should do is start, get these edges off, make it be more squared up. Okay, again, saving these pieces. Okay, so now this is the thickness of 14 cards because it was 7 and 7. So what I can do is roll it back to 7 and flatten it, or I could have kept it the way it was, depending on how thick I liked it. All right, so now what we're going to do is roll it up like a sleeping bag. Start. The starting is the hardest. You're going to tuck it up. You're going to try to keep it even. You don't want one side going faster than the other. Going slowly like this. Now you've got, from the end, it should look like a cinnamon roll. What we need to do is make it smaller and make sure that there's no gaps like any air bubbles. So this is called reducing the cane. In the previous example, I was able to just put my hands and squeeze. This one, you don't want to, you want to keep it round. So you have to be careful to be rotating and resist the temptation to go like this. Put it out and just roll it like a snake. That's going to make it twist. And we don't want it to be twisting. We won't see the spiral in the middle. Okay, you can make this as small as you want. Now I'm going to show you how it looks. Slice it. That first one is always distorted. And now you've got this twirl. Okay. And you can give some twirls to your neighbor. I always think it looks good to have a few so it doesn't look so random. And again, keeping with your color scheme is a great way to go. What you could also do is take a different color. A contrasting color works best. And you can wrap it. Even if you don't do the whole cane. If you just have this little scrap. That's what I said not to do. I absentmindedly did it. Now you've got a twirl, but now it's wrapped. So that's another way to create interest and make some more variety. Okay. Okay. Next is the dots. Some people call this a bullseye. All you're going to do is make a snake. Make it even. You're going to take a wrapped piece. Square it off. Again, you would be doing it bigger than I'm doing it, but I don't want to take the time here. Pretend that matched all the way back up. You're going to reduce it, being careful not to twist it. Take a slice. And now what you want to do is cut some of these slices off, put these on before you go further. If you want to go further from a big one to make it smaller, to make it like a flower or dots, what you would do is, this is going to be hard because I don't have enough to really show you. You would put 2 of them together. Let's pretend I had enough. Pretend these were longer, right? You put these 2 together and then you squeeze it. Okay, squeeze it together. You can wrap it. Okay, and now I can reduce this. I'll even be able to do it with a small amount, but it's very tricky. And I think it will be frustrating for the campers to use such a small amount. So include bigger. I just don't want this training video to go on so long. So I'm rotating it as I'm reducing the cane. So this in particular is where the term millefiori comes from. So millefiori is this technique. This is a millefiori cane. This means 1,000 flowers in Italian. This technique was not developed originally for polymer clay. The original source is in glass blowing. So if you've ever been to Venice or Murano in Italy, they, with glass, make this technique. Oh, and look at that happy accident. I made, it looks like a face or a peace sign here, just with these 3 dots. And then slice that and put that on. And then again, I could even see it's like, it's endless. It's sort of addicting. You could then take another color and you could see I could wrap it around. And that would be like a really cool effect. So that's this technique. Now, I did neglect to mention the very first thing you should do is you should take a Sharpie oil-based paint pen and write their name and bunk on the bottom. A Sharpie laundry marker also works. A regular Sharpie doesn't work as well, but it does work. So when I'm saying it works, it needs to last in the oven and not burn off in the oven. So the instructions for this are you want to have the oven preheated to 275 for, I think it's like 15 minutes. Put them on a cookie tray. And because of the glass, you want to forget what I said about the preheating. I'd like you to put it into a cold oven and then set it to 275. When it reaches temperature, then don't exceed 15 minutes of baking time, or the light colors can discolor. I have a feeling at 275, if you put it into a 275 oven, it wouldn't crack the glass. But because I haven't done a test of that, it's always safer to put it into a cold oven and then raise it to the temperature. If I'm feeling brave, I may do a test on that when I have some more time. Okay, so it's going to be baked, and then you don't take it out of the oven because you're afraid it may shatter. Let it cool in the oven. It's not going to hurt the clay being in there longer once the oven is off. As long as the highest temperature doesn't keep going, then you're not going to get that color fade. Let it cool, and then we're going to wrap it. To wrap these, we really need to be comprehensive. Use paper, or if you have been able from the camp to save any bubble wrap or from some mailers. Inside here, put the little piece of paper that explains it. This is probably going to go into that plexiglass cylinder container with the rest of their Havdalah items. But you do want to give this a wrap with some paper first. And the best way to do it is to wrap it from the bottom and stuff everything in here. The little send home paper about this can either go in here or it can go in the kit if you're doing it that way. I hope this was helpful. There's some resources on the Google Drive that will be available to you, like this handout, and some information about some background on Havdalah and the purpose of Havdalah. Thank you so much for staying to the end of this training video. Good luck.